Today, we're going to answer a common question that comes up a lot with the 805 law firm, and that is, can one spouse be made to pay the legal fees for another spouse? So, Bill, how often does one spouse end up paying another spouse's legal fees and costs?
I think you might be surprised, Dean. We see it a lot. Quite often, there's an inequity of ability to pay for an attorney. Courts look at that. And the most common fee shifting statute can be found in Family Code Section 2030. That family law section specifically addresses the most common problems. And one position has a need for attorney's fees and costs, and the other one has the ability to pay the costs of the other spouse. The courts well award that. So we come across this quite often.
Welcome to the 805 Law Group Podcast, your source for an entertaining blend of law and legal community updates. Each week, you'll get crucial insights into family law, personal injury, criminal defense, and estate planning, along with the latest insider information about what's happening in the local legal community and high-profile cases right here on the Central Coast. Now let's get started with your host, the founder of 805 Law Group, attorney Bill Ausman. Welcome to the 805 Law Group Podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Dean Mignola.
And I'm Bill Ausman.
Today, we're going to answer a common question that comes up a lot with the 805 law firm, and that is, can one spouse be made to pay the legal fees for another spouse? So, Bill, how often does one spouse end up paying another spouse's legal fees and costs?
I think you might be surprised, Dean. We see it a lot. Quite often, there's an inequity of ability to pay for an attorney. The courts look at that. And the most common fee shifting statute can be found in Family Code Section 2030. That family law section specifically addresses the most common problems. And one position has a need for attorney's fees and costs, and the other one has the ability to pay the costs of the other spouse. The courts well award that. So we come across this quite often, Dean.
Now, so as a general rule, are there specific circumstances under which a court's more likely to order one spouse to pay attorney fees and costs to the other spouse?
Absolutely. It's really important to work closely with your legal team to present a very excellent case. So one of the things that's required is income and expense declaration. The court will look at what your income is, what your expenses are. Most importantly, on the bottom of the second page of that form, it talks about assets, it talks about stocks and bonds you can easily sell, savings, checking accounts. The court is keenly aware of what is available. And by presenting that evidence in the court, you can really effectively control that situation.
Okay. So are there different steps that the one spouse that's kind of looking for help, what are the steps that they need to go through?
Well, what they need to do is to get with counsel to present that information in a very succinct way. Getting the bank statements, getting the stock certificates, getting the information that the court's going to look at, getting that information, showing the court, showing what their expenses are and their income is. It's not only required, it is the things that will turn whether the judge grants you the relief you're looking for and the attorney's fees and costs or not.
So what are the potential advantages and disadvantages for a spouse paying the other spouse's attorney fees and costs in a divorce?
Well, there can be great advantages in paying the other spouse's attorney's fees and costs. If you get in right away and you understand that, hey, there is some liability here, you can often negotiate a lesser sum by reaching out to the other side, offering your support, cooperating, and ultimately offering something that would be lower than the courts might order.
Okay. Now, can payment of the attorney's fees and costs by a spouse affect the overall outcome of a divorce settlement and maybe even a custody battle?
Absolutely. But by cooperating with the other side, by looking at what the fees and costs are, by offering some attorney's fees and costs, you can quite often leverage a position and make it more enticing for the other spouse to agree with you by offering attorney's fees and costs. We've done that effectively for both spouses in different situations.
Are you enjoying the 805 Law Group podcast so far? Make sure you never miss an episode by hitting that subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. For more information about 805 Law Group, visit our website, 805lawgroup.com. Now, let's get back to the show. Okay, are there any ethical considerations or potential conflicts of interest when one spouse pays the attorney's fees and costs of the other spouse? And if so, how are these typically addressed?
There can be some ethical concerns. One of the things that is the state bar likes us to point out is that you have the right to pay your attorney's fees and costs. And as an attorney that is representing the spouse that is receiving that, they want you to let you know that it's not going to affect your opinion or your duties to your client.
Okay, that makes sense. Can a prenuptial agreement include provisions related to which spouse will be responsible for paying the attorney's fees and costs in case there's a legal dispute or separation?
Absolutely. We really encourage folks to get a prenuptial agreement. If you're thinking about a marriage, it's really a good idea to line out your duties and your rights. And so the courts give great deference to somebody that comes in with a prenuptial agreement and will give you, in most situations, exactly what the prenuptial agreement says. So it's a great way of deciding what attorney's fees and costs are on both sides and have that decided before the court even gets involved.
Okay, good to know. Well, thank you, Bill. That's going to wrap up this episode of the 805 Law Group podcast. Now, of course, if you enjoyed this content, go ahead, drop a like below. We'd love it if you hit the subscribe button or the follow button, depending on what platform you're on. And if you'd like to be notified for when we release future episodes, just click on the notification bell. And also, feel free to comment down below if you have any questions or feedback. Bill, any final words before we go?
If you have further questions along these lines, please give us a call. We'd be glad to help you and point you in the right direction.
All right. Well, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the 805 Law Group podcast. Don't forget to visit our website, 805lawgroup.com/podcast, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Music, so you never miss an episode. If you found value in the show, we'd love it if you could rate it on iTunes or even tell your friends. Make sure to join attorney Bill Ausman next week for another informative and entertaining episode. Remember, at 805 Law Group, we're turning law into empowerment, one episode at a time.